Jesus performed dozens of miracles during his time on earth, healing the sick, calming storms, even raising the dead. Today, we're counting down 5 of his most powerful miracles. Stick around because number 5 is going to leave you in awe. Number 5, turning water into wine. At a wedding in Cana, the host ran out of wine, a serious embarrassment in that culture. Jesus told the servants to fill 6 stone jars with water. When they poured it out, it had become wine, and not just any wine, the best the guests had tasted all night. It was the first public miracle of his ministry, quietly revealing who he really was. Number 4, calming the storm. It had been a long day of teaching, and as evening fell, Jesus told his disciples, "Let's cross to the other side of the lake." Many of them were experienced fishermen who had spent their whole lives on this water. But nothing could have prepared them for what came next. As they sailed, a furious storm rose up without warning. The Sea of Galilee was known for sudden, violent squalls. With waves so large, they began crashing over the sides of the boat, filling it with water. The disciples fought desperately against the wind, and through it all, Jesus was asleep in the back of the boat, exhausted from the day, completely undisturbed by the chaos around him. Finally, terrified and certain they were going to drown, the disciples woke him crying out, "Teacher, don't you care that we're going to die?" Jesus stood up. He didn't pray. He didn't call out to heaven for help. He simply spoke directly to the storm, "Peace, be still." And instantly, not gradually, but instantly, the wind stopped and the sea became perfectly calm. The disciples sat in stunned silence, more afraid of this calm than they had been of the storm itself. They turned to one another and asked, "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him." It was a question that would follow them for the rest of their lives, because a man who could simply speak to nature and be obeyed wasn't just a man at all. Number 3, feeding the 5,000. Jesus had just received devastating news. His cousin, John the Baptist, had been executed. He withdrew by boat to a remote place, likely seeking a moment alone to grieve. But the crowd saw where he was headed and followed him on foot. And when he stepped off the boat, instead of the solitude he may have wanted, he found a massive crowd waiting, and he had compassion on them. He spent the day teaching and healing the sick among them. As evening approached, his disciples grew concerned. They were in a remote location, far from any town, and the crowd, easily 5,000 men, likely far more when counting women and children, had nothing to eat. "Send them away so they can buy food," the disciples urged. But Jesus had a different plan. "You give them something to eat," he said. The disciples were stunned. Even with 8 months' wages, it wouldn't be enough to feed this many people. Then a boy stepped forward with all he had, 5 small barley loaves and 2 fish. A modest lunch, nowhere near enough for a crowd this size. Jesus took what little there was, looked up to heaven, gave thanks, and began breaking the bread. And then something extraordinary happened. As the disciples carried the food out into the crowd, it didn't run out. It kept multiplying in their hands, basket after basket, until every single person had eaten and was satisfied. When it was all over, the disciples gathered up the leftovers, 12 full baskets, more than they'd started with. A small act of generosity, multiplied beyond anything humanly possible. Number 2, healing the man born blind. As Jesus walked through the streets one day, he passed a man who had been blind since the moment he was born. Never once in his life had he seen a sunrise, a face, or a single color. His disciples asked Jesus a question common to that time: who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? It was widely believed that suffering like this was a direct punishment for sin. Jesus' answer reshaped the entire conversation. Neither this man nor his parents sinned, he said, but this happened so that the works of God might be displayed in him. His suffering wasn't a punishment. It was about to become a testimony. Jesus knelt down, spit on the ground, and made mud with the saliva. He spread it over the man's eyes and gave him an unusual instruction. Go wash in the pool of Siloam. The man didn't ask questions. Blind, led by hands he couldn't see, he made his way to the pool, knelt down, and washed the mud away. And in that moment, for the very first time in his entire life, he could see light, color, faces, the sky itself all at once. He returned home seeing, and the people who knew him as the blind beggar could barely believe it was the same man. Even when religious leaders pressured him, threatened him, and refused to believe his story, He held firmly to the one thing he knew for certain. One thing I do know. I was blind, but now I see. And number one, raising Lazarus from the dead. Lazarus was one of Jesus's closest friends, the brother of Mary and Martha. When he fell seriously ill, his sister sent an urgent message to Jesus, "Lord, the one you love is sick." Strangely, instead of rushing to his side, Jesus stayed where he was for 2 more days. By the time he finally arrived in Bethany, Lazarus had already been dead and buried for 4 days. In Jewish tradition, this was significant, since many believed the spirit lingered near the body for 3 days before departing completely. 4 days meant there was no question, no doubt. Lazarus was truly, completely gone. When Jesus arrived, Martha ran to meet him, grief and faith tangled together in her words. "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now, I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you." Jesus told her, "Your brother will rise again." Then Mary came as well, weeping at his feet with the same words her sister had spoken. Seeing her tears and the grief of those around her, Jesus himself was deeply moved, and he wept. Then he asked to be taken to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. "Take away the stone," Jesus said. Martha hesitated. After 4 days, there would already be the smell of death, but the stone was removed. Jesus looked upward and prayed aloud, then called out in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out!" And he did. The man who had been dead for 4 days walked out of his own tomb, still wrapped in burial cloths, alive. The crowd that had come to mourn stood in stunned, terrified silence, and then erupted in awe. It remains one of the clearest, most undeniable signs Jesus ever gave that he held power not just over sickness, not just over storms, but over death itself. 5 miracles, 5 incredible moments that stopped people in their tracks and forced the disciples to ask that haunting question, who is this man? From turning water into wine at a wedding feast, to feeding thousands from a child's small lunch, to finally calling Lazarus out of his own tomb after 4 days. Each miracle revealed something unique: his deep compassion, his absolute authority, and his power over nature, sickness, and even death itself. But in everyone, Jesus met people exactly where they were: at a wedding running out of wine, in a boat full of terrified fishermen, or at the entrance of a tomb. He didn't wait for them to have it together, he just showed up. So, I want to ask you, which of these miracles hit you the most? The storm, the healing, or Lazarus? Drop your answer in the comments below. I read every single one. And subscribe so you don't miss the next story. He's still showing up today.